Thank you.
Next up is the Energy Initiatives wind turbine at landfill, and I would ask Barbara Gookin to step forward.
All three of my articles for annual town meeting are related as efforts to reduce our ever-increasing demand for electricity that's imported from the mainland through the undersea electric cables. The biggest mistake I believe our town has made in recent history was connecting us to the mainland with the first cable. This was really the result of a lack of leadership and poor planning, which has created an ever-increasing expense to ratepayers. When we got rid of the diesel generators, we really should have replaced them with another form of electric production. But if we continue to do nothing, this approach is just going to lead us to need a third cable within this decade. And it will be especially burdensome to our year-round ratepayers. We're still paying $76 million in surcharges on our electric bills just for the first two cables, which we will never own. So basically, we're funding the right to import electricity to the mainland. So we have no control over that. I would like to see us avoid spending another $60 million for a third cable in the near future. And to avoid that, we need to act now, and we need to produce electricity on the island. Otherwise, we will have spent $136 million just on these three cables. And really, we'd have nothing to show for that. I mean, if you think about that astronomical number of $136 million, what else we could have done with that. Instead, we're burdening our current ratepayers and the next two generations of ratepayers. So children in elementary school right now will be grandparents, and those kids will still be paying these crazy rates. I guess we'll start with Article 71, which is it's a non-binding resolution, which means basically we're going to ask the voters to voice an opinion and give a directive that, well, it's more than a suggestion, but it tells our leaders that we do or do not want something to happen. And they might or might not do it. And it's really just a matter of voting at town meeting to say what we want. So this first one, number 71, is a non-binding resolution to see if the town will vote to adopt, well, this resolution directing the Board of Selectmen and the Airport Commission to pursue the development of photovoltaic solar systems at the airport and wastewater treatment facility, or to take any other action related. So basically, these are two proposals that the town has already worked on in the past, and they set aside these proposals for various reasons. At the airport, there is a map up here to show you the site that was selected, and there was an RFP put out, there were bidders that came in, and then the project was put on hold. There were several reasons, including the fact that the airport, as we all know, has gone through a tremendous financial reevaluation, and this was at that time that that all came to head. There were also endangered species in the airport land, including that spot, that would have needed to be mitigated. So it was doable, but it was tricky, and they just decided to just set it aside. So I'm asking that we bring it back. The same thing with the other site, which isn't shown in this map, but it's at the sewer beds. So these are where we have tremendous municipal electric consumption, which means we all pay for that. This is a way to reduce that, and if we put it out to bid for someone to lease these properties and own the solar projects, basically what would happen is the town would get a free solar project developed on their land, and it would be able to be used, the electricity would be used right on site with a power purchase agreement, so that the vendor would produce the electricity and sell it to the town to be used right on the site. I don't know if we want to ask, each one of these at a time and then take questions? Or
Why don't you just sort of summarize the other two?
The next one?
Yeah,
Okay.
And then we'll take the questions.
So Article 72 is another energy initiative. The town recently has installed some electric vehicle charging stations on the island, and that happened through a grant from the state, so it didn't really cost the town much. It did cost something, but very little. And I think there are 3 on the island right now, and they're being used in a variety of ways. I think the one at the airport is being used by Cape Air. There's one at the high school, and they have different vehicles that they charge there. And there's one, I believe at 37 Washington Street, the town building on Washington Street. So I'm looking to have the town vote that if we install any future vehicle charging stations, that they would have a renewable energy source that would feed those charging stations. Because again, this adds more demand to our cables to the mainland. And if you think about it, you're plugging in your car to this cable that's feeding you electricity from the mainland that's produced primarily by nuclear energy at the Pilgrim plant, which in this map it shows you where that's located. So the baseline of electricity that's imported here is not renewables. It's coal, it's nuclear, and a variety of other things, but the baseline is nuclear and coal. And I think a lot of people who are plugging in electric cars feel good about that, thinking they're doing something great for the environment. You know, they're going green, but you're really not if you're plugging into this other source of electricity. If that's your goal, then you should support this article. And even if it isn't your goal, I have 2 minutes. You know, we can avoid a third cable to the mainland by stop creating these other ways of consuming electricity that we're importing. And then Article 84 is the proposal for a small wind turbine at the landfill. And that wind turbine would be just like the one at the high school that exists now. You can go look at it yourself. You don't need to see charts and comparisons of different wind turbines and scales to the island. It's right there in our community. It's quite benign. It's not very noisy. And at this point, there are very few complaints. So this proposal at the landfill, you can see this area marked there. That shows you the site, and the bluish purple area indicates where the shadows would fall. The turbine itself is sort of, if you look at that as a butterfly, the wind turbine itself would be right in the middle of those 2 wings. It's, as I said, not a big wind turbine. There are no houses in the area where the shadow or flicker would be effective. There's going to be very little noise, as you can just go see the one at the high school to get your bearings as far as what's being proposed. It's just the same thing at another site. This one would not be owned by the town. Again, I'm considering that this would be a vendor, that the town would put out a bid, and then bidders, if they so choose and see this as a viable thing to do, they'll bid on it, and they would own it and maintain it. The town would simply lease them this tiny piece of land at the dump and use the electricity right on site by signing a 20-year agreement for a reduced rate. So it's a win-win, really. And this one is not just a non-binding article. This one would actually authorize the selectmen to enter a lease at the landfill and to sign a power purchase agreement if they so choose. It says at the end of this to, it authorizes the Board of Selectmen to do this as they deem to be in the best interest of the town or to take any other action related thereto. I think I'm out of time.
Okay, very good. I have 2 questions. I'll give you the tough one first.
Okay.
We voted against a wind turbine at the landfill twice.
Right.
Why bring this up again?
Well, simply because most of the comments that were talked on town meeting floor were about the finances of the town funding a wind turbine at the landfill. And this removes all of that. So this would only happen if the Board of Selectmen decide to go through with it after voters, suggest it with this article. This only authorizes them. It doesn't force them. It doesn't instruct them. It authorizes them that if they choose to go forward with this, town meeting has supported it.
Okay, and this question pertains to the solar facility at the airport. Shouldn't the airport commission in town make the decision as to whether a photovoltaic installation should be done rather than a sense of the meeting?
Well, this allows both. This would offer voice from the voters, and certainly the town and the airport would still make that decision. So this is just sort of saying, we'd like you to go forward with this.
The third question here, I'm having trouble reading. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to see if you can see what that says. Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask the person who wrote it.
I can read it, most of it. What percent of the landfill electric needs would be met? The percent is 15%. So right now, the landfill consumes about 4 million kilowatt hours per year, and it would be roughly 300,000 kilowatts that would be produced.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? If not, I'd like to ask...
I have one.
You have one? Okay, bring it up. Tim, let me ask you if you have any comments or anything to convey from the Finance Committee while they're bringing up this next question about any of these three articles, and each one is quite different in its focus.
Peter, yes, the Finance Committee, particularly on the first two, thought that there were other issues that need to be considered. The FAA just came out with new concerns with regard to reflective sunlight that needs to be looked at. And as you know, the Selectmen have empowered a sewer committee to look at expansion of the sewer network throughout the island, which could put competing interests in the real estate over at the sewer beds. So there's some other things to look at before we jump into those two particular articles that Barbara has brought forward. And we were asking the voters to not support at this time because of those concerns. The last one on Article 84, the Finance Committee actually, in the end, chose not to support that article, although we were split down the middle on that. We, as a committee, some of us thought there would be no power in it, in empowering the selectmen to look at this. Others felt differently. So in the end, we had a vote not to support this at this time.
Okay, and another question is, we've discussed solar and wind as renewable energy sources. What about tidal flow?
Actually, the town is engaged in a project that is mostly, I don't know where the funding comes from, but it's an initiative put forward by the town of Edgartown on the Vineyard, and the town has been involved in that in a supportive capacity through the planning department. I'd say it's sort of a research project at this point. It's not something our town's ready to get involved in, if ever. I did want to clarify a statement I made a minute ago about the energy consumption at the landfill. I misspoke and said 4 million kilowatt hours per year. It's 2 million kilowatt hours.
All right. We've run out of time on this topic, so I thank you. And
okay.